Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel where today we finally are able to go over the things that were talked about at Tankfest with Wargaming. It's taken a little while to get this feedback cleared because various folks at Wargaming have been on other business trips, holiday, sickness, you know, the usual life things and work things. So here we are. I have a list of things that I can talk about. So I will go through this list and I will give you details as and when I can. But before I do, I want to take the opportunity to thank Wargaming for inviting me to Tankfest this year. This was my second time with Wargaming, and Tankfest is always an incredible experience. And this year was that much more incredible because I got to see the FV 4005 Stage 2, this tank on screen right now. I got to see this pull out into the arena for the very first time with the public around. Its first public appearance. I was there for the moment it drove into the Tank Museum arena. And I think, you know, this is it was a historical moment because this tank hasn't run. I would assume it hasn't run since its trials in, what was it, 1953 or something? And this tank was restored by the gentleman driving it there, Mr. Hughes, and I did get the opportunity to speak to him at the Wargaming community party on the Saturday night. And before the party started, I was checking my channel because the video I did was the views skyrocketed, and I was checking the comments, and he had left a comment on my video, and I thought, well, he's at the party, so I'll say, hey. I tapped him on the shoulder and said, hey, by the way, that was my video you commented on. And he congratulated me on the success of the video, and he thanked me for the video. And he said that he was glad I did it because contractually he was not allowed to post any footage of the FV 4005 driving. So he was very grateful to me for the video that I uploaded, and I was very grateful to him for restoring it. So that was a nice moment to share with the gentleman that put all the work into bringing us the 4005. Right, that's the introduction covered. So now I will just quickly say what you're seeing here is a very unique experience to Tankfest. This is the tank park. This is where the tanks are parked before they drive out into the arena. Now this is a Tankfest only thing. If you go for Tiger Day, this area isn't here, because the number of tanks for Tiger Day is a lot smaller. They don't have this area open to the public at any other time of year. This is just a Tankfest thing, so keep that in mind. If you want to see this sort of thing, go during Tankfest. But I've recorded it like this just so that you guys can get this experience as well, for those that can't make it. So there we go. Let's get into the stuff that was talked about with Wargaming. Let's get to the nitty gritty. Okay, so the 3 CCs, well, there were 4 CCs there. V-Shaw was there, or Gambit, I don't know which, either. Eclipse was there, Petty was there, and I was there. So for the Friday, it was myself, Eclipse, and Petty. We were all sat in a room with everybody from Wargaming that was there. All the staff from Wargaming that came over. We were on one side of the room and they were on the other. It felt like a bit like a trial, really, with the 3 of us sat in front of sort of 5 or 6 people. there was a laugh or two at the start for that. But this meeting we had on Friday morning, it was scheduled to be an hour, but it ran on for 2 hours. So that gives you the context for how much there was for us to talk about. This wasn't just, you know, stream like, here's a question, boom, there's your 20-second answer. We asked questions, we got answers, and we pushed back on these answers. We pushed back for 2 hours, and we covered everything from the matchmaker to maps to tank balance to the nitty-gritty of tank modules and how you earn tank modules and whether or not things can be changed. So let me just go through the list here that I've got written down so that you guys can get an understanding of what we're talking about. But I've set the scene there a little bit for you. So first question. When will the servers be updated? This is actively being looked into, and I'm glad this is being looked into because, as you guys know, I did a video on the state of the servers, and quite frankly, the state that they're in right now is not acceptable at all. I have been playing other tank games, and I have not had any hit registry issues. I've not had any ghost round issues. So these big online tank games can be played with acceptable server latency and server registry, and it can be done. So Wargaming are looking into that now, and I hope that this is a matter of priority, because one of the reasons I'm playing a different tank game at the moment is because this tank game, World of Tanks, has been painful. It's been very painful, almost too painful to play for me recently, which is why I am not suffering through it, and I am spending my time elsewhere. So, there you go. Let's see what happens. What is Wargaming doing to demonstrate it is listening to its fans? Alright, well, what they have is they have plans to change who the CCs have access to. So what do we mean by that? Well, two things. They're changing who the CCs have access to, which means that in the CC Discord that we've got, so there's the public Discord that everybody can be a part of, and then there's the program Discord for those that are CAs, CCs, and part of the program. In that Discord, we are going to get access to more of the people at Wargaming. So essentially, my hope is that everyone that was at Tankfest will be in this Discord, and we can have direct contact with them, because it's much nicer to be able to ask the questions directly to people rather than trying to play Chinese whispers and go through 3 or 4 people. So from the program point of view, that's one side. But another side of it is Wargaming going to start to rotate who is on the weekly stream. So at the moment, you guys are familiar with Winged, you're familiar with KB, you're familiar with BAM, you're familiar with Tankzors. These guys, you're all familiar with them. But there were people at Tankfest that I got to speak to that we've never seen on stream. And what's going to happen is Wargaming are going to start to rotate who is on the stream, so that it's not just it's not so much a ask a question and the response is, oh, we're not sure, let's get back to you. It's ask the question to the people that are responsible for developing maps. For example, you ask a map question, you're asking it to the map designer. You won't just get a, oh, we're not sure. You'll get a, okay, boom, here's the real answer. So that's very, very good. That is a positive change that I really hope they introduce soon. So thumbs up to Wargaming for that. Next one, is Sigma a good term to use when discussing gun accuracy? Yes and no. I'll explain why. The Gaussian function, in conjunction with a random number generator, is used to determine gun accuracy. The bell curve for each gun is the same, but the 100-meter accuracy of the gun determines the variance in accuracy. Now, fortunately for me, I studied the sigma functions and the various formulas that go along with standard deviation or deviation in mathematics. So I understand what this Gaussian function means, but I'm not going to give you guys the maths class. If you want to look it up, you can. But essentially, there's sigma basically means is the term for standard deviation, which means how much does something deviate from normal. And is gun accuracy based, is it RNG or is it something else? It is RNG, sort of, because the Gaussian function is essentially a mathematical formula, and every mathematical formula, whether it's A plus B, A needs to be a number, B needs to be a number. So those numbers are going to come from somewhere, and those numbers come from a random number generator. So is it 100% RNG? No. Well, maybe yes and no. The Gaussian function is used in conjunction with a random number generator. That is how accuracy is determined, and it's determined when you pull the trigger. It's not determined before you pull the trigger. So it's not like it's determined to go way off long before you pull the trigger. It is determined exactly at the moment of pulling the trigger. That's when the number is generated. So there you go. That's how accuracy works in the game. Next question. Will we get a PC client version of Modern Armor? This is something that they need to look into and needs a lot of optimization. So what that means is, even though you've got Wargaming as a whole with Blitz, PC and console, This question is about, will we get the modern armor version of the game on PC? Now, that would be cool because the PC version doesn't have modern tanks, so this would be the console version getting into the PC market as well. That would be cool. That would be I mean, Wargaming need to figure this out, but that would, in my mind, that would seem like internal competition with their own PC version of the game. But hey, not my problem. That would be cool. It would be cool to see that on PC. So they're not against it. It's not a yes. It's not a no. It will take a lot of optimization, but we'll see. And there is Mr. Hughes. That is the gentleman that restored the 4005. And that's the guy I got to speak to. So there you go. Right. Can the marks of excellence be made the same across all duplicate tanks? What does this mean? Duplicate tanks, that is an example, would be the Fatherland and the IS-3 Auto. Both tier 8 Russian premium heavies. Those two tanks statistically are exactly the same. So why do they have different marks of excellence is what this question is asking. If they're exactly the same tank, why do they have two different marks of excellence between them? Wargaming have said that this is something they can look into, but they just need to make sure that there are absolutely no differences between the tanks. They need to make sure that they are 100% the same tank, because if they're not, obviously, then they need different stats. But if they are exactly the same tank, then that's something that could be looked at for sure. Will shared modules be coming back across tiers? Now, the explanation for this is, the answer is no, but there needs to be a bit of explanation, because just a no answer shuts you down and you're like, okay, well, why? Well, the reason is, and I've got the message here from Winged, the reason it's not going to be shared is because the XP for each tank is just a linear line, and there is no crossover. It's just this tank starts here and it ends there. There is no crossover between tier 9 and tier 10, or whichever tier you want to think about. It's just boom. That's what it is. That's how it works at the moment. So the answer is no, but not because, no, it's a terrible idea. It's just that's not how the game is set up at the moment. Removal of the 100-player clan limit. When this question was asked, there was some sort of, I suppose, not confusion, just like surprise, I would say. They didn't know if they could or could not remove the limit, and it needs to be looked into. So again, it's not like a yes, it's going to happen, or a no, it's not going to happen. They need to look into why the limit at the moment is 100. And they also need to look into how changing the limit would affect the viability of future clan stuff that they've got planned. So again, it's not a no, it's not a yes, it's this needs to be looked into. Right, can 5-man platoons return to multiplayer? The answer is no, not multiplayer, not player versus player, but 5-man platoons can return to event modes where you're facing AI, basically. That's not a problem. But the reason that 5-man platoons are not coming back to multiplayer is simply because they are deemed as unfair, overpowered, and I personally disagree with that, but apparently the data doesn't support my opinion. It is what it is, unfortunately. Alright, so can more be added to the game for veteran players? The answer is yes, but anything that is added cannot provide a gameplay advantage to any player. So essentially what that means is, if you're a veteran and you've been playing for 10 years, your gameplay experience cannot be any more advantageous than someone who's just downloaded the game. I can understand that, but at the same time, I'm not really okay with that answer, because me having an advantage in game because I've played the game for 10 years is my reward for playing the game 10 years. If you're not going to reward me for playing the game long term, I simply won't play the game long term. That's just my take on it. So I would like to have this discussion a little bit more. I'd like to flesh this one out, because it would be nice to have some better rewards for veteran players, reasons to keep playing the game. But at the moment, what they've said is they are happy to take they're happy to receive ideas for things that are not gameplay advantageous for a gameplay point of view. So things like 3D skins or cosmetics, I suppose is what you could call those things. They would be acceptable at this stage. Yes. Will more maps arrive in the game? Yes. With the work being done by the new creative director, the goal is to push out maps at a much higher frequency, and suggestions for how larger Cold War maps can be introduced were taken on board and noted, as well as additional maps for World War II. Now, this conversation did take up a lot of time, because when we say, oh, we want bigger maps, it's like, okay, you want bigger maps, but what do you mean by that? And at the time, I'd been playing War Thunder for about a week, and I got to experience a good variety of War Thunder maps, and what I noticed was a lot of the maps in War Thunder are not detailed from a infrastructure point of view. There aren't bridges and buildings and cars and what have you everywhere. It's just a 4-kilometer square map of rolling farmland with a farmhouse here or there, forest, bushes, trees, and that is what makes up the map, with undulating topography, and the undulations in the ground is what provides you with your cover. And that point was, I'm glad to say, that point was taken on board, and I'm hoping to see more realistic maps in Cold War, because one thing I will say is the maps to me aren't very realistic. I mean, take Mannheim for example. I know they're trying to replicate a city, but my engineer brain is kicking in, and I just know no city would ever look like that. It just wouldn't. But when I play War Thunder, a lot of those maps are like, okay, this actually looks like a real place. And I'm hoping that the larger maps will result in more realistic scenery. That's what I'd really like to see. As well as more variety for the World War II players. There needs to be more added for World War II, and the creative director was very adamant in saying that he wanted to pick up the pace. He wants to get things out quicker because things have been taking far too long. So the map conversation, in my opinion, that was a very, very constructive conversation, and fingers crossed something comes of it. Alright, will we see wheeled vehicles in Cold War? The lead tank designer, Plague, has a strong desire to introduce more wheeled vehicles, but the game engine is the limiting factor. The game engine is designed for tracked vehicles, not wheeled vehicles. Once a tool has been developed that allows for a realistic feel to wheeled vehicles, we will see more of them in game. So the key here, the key point made here is once a tool has been developed. This was a conversation that I had with Bam and Zotz, the creative director, and the way I understood it was, at the moment, the tools in their toolbox are not capable of producing what the community is asking. It's not that they can't do what the community is asking, they just haven't developed the internal process for delivering that yet. And what Zotz wants to do is he wants to improve the tools that are available to the developers, which means that when the community says, hey, can we have this wheeled vehicle, instead of it being a long, lengthy development process because it's a difficult thing to implement in the game, it's just yeah, okay, we'll get the model done, we'll apply the wheeled vehicle tool to the model that we've already developed, and boom, there you go, there's the vehicle, boom, there's the vehicle, boom, there's the vehicle. And this, it's kind of like the problem Wargaming have had is they'll be working on an idea, but because it takes so long to work on the idea, management will step in and say, hey, we need you to work on this, and then it's like, okay, well, we've got to shelve that. So what's been happening is Wargaming have been working flat out. The folks like Bam, Plague, all these guys in the background, they've been working flat out, but because things are taking so long to develop, nothing's been delivered to us. So they're working really, really hard, and they're busy, but us as the community, we're sitting here like nothing seems to be coming. And that explains, historically, that explains why that's been the case. So yeah, hopefully that explains a lot of the situation from Wargaming's point of view. Hopefully you guys understand what I'm saying. Now, this is a question I was asked. I won't use the real name, but think it's Winged Racer's boss. I think this is the gentleman that asked me this, but he asked me what should the top priorities of wargaming be from a player's perspective, and my answer simply was, well, the two things that players interact with the most, the maps and the tanks. We need better tank balance across Cold War and Tier 10, 8 to 10 I'd say. We need more maps for World War II. We need larger maps for Cold War, like I've mentioned already. And the balancing and the... it's essentially balancing. The balancing of eras 2 and 3 really need to be addressed, because it's just chaos at the moment. It's not fun. And again, there's a reason why I have started playing another tank game at the moment. I'm waiting for the next update to come out that I hope will shake things up. So yeah, those were my answers to those questions. But as a player, again, what are my biggest pain points? That's another question I was asked. And again, it's just the imbalance in Era 2 and Era 3. Era 2, for example, you could make the argument, you know, why play anything else but the Big Light Panzer? Like, really, you could make that argument. Why? Why play the Centurion 9? Why play the Conqueror when you can play the Big Light Panzer and just run around smacking everything with an ATGM and your autocannon at 80-90 kilometers an hour and just scoot off into your smoke and disappear? Like, that needs to be balanced. It really does need to be balanced. It needs to be reeled in and brought in line so that the vehicles have their place. Like, I want heavies to have their place in Era 2 and Era 3. Mediums need their place, lights need their place, but we can't have one tank class just doing everything. It's too much. We're getting to the end here, so this is more of an idea rather than a conversation. There is no single way for Wargaming to poll the community. Now, they can put a poll in Discord, but that's only accessible to those that are in Discord. They can put a poll out on their YouTube channel, but again, that's only accessible to those that are subscribed. So there were suggestions made about how they could poll people from the game directly, because that's where everyone goes to. If you put a question in the game itself, you know you're going to be asking everybody that plays the game. So ideas were suggested and they took that on board. And the last thing I'll mention that I brought up, because this happened in front of the devs, it was Sunday morning, I was setting up a game and I was putting camo on my tank, the console lagged, and because the gold spend, the 250 gold spend is right under my thumb, I spent 250 gold on one of the Tank Museum accounts. And I asked them, please remove gold spends from under our thumb. Please, 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 please get rid of that. So there you go, guys. That is about everything that I can remember right now. Well, the list that has been approved by Wargaming, that is everything from the list plus a little bit more. So there you go. I don't think I've missed anything. If I have missed anything, I'll bring it up in a later video. But for now, that is all I've got for this one, guys. If you've enjoyed this video, please leave it a like, if not a dislike. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll catch you in the next one.